Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this particular matchup featuring IM's MVP. He is in the blue trunks and he is playing Terran to the south of the Metropolis versus his opponent, Evil Genius's EGIdrA. He is in the green trunks and he is playing Zerg to the north.
And just to jump back to what I said before about EGIdrA playing MVP, I think it was a ladder game played on EGIdRA's stream, and then Autosis picked it up and did a broadcast of it on his YouTube. And it really was a fantastic game where we saw EGIdrA actually take down MVP with fantastic use of Mutalisk, Ling, and Bailings, of course. But times have changed since then. That was early 2011, and the Mutalisks are not as effective anymore. They've been pushed out the metagame because people are getting so good at defending them. People are opening up with a lot more defensive builds, such as early third command centers, and so on.
Damn, I tell you, I wish I could deal with Mutalisks better. Those things are still a nightmare of me as Terran. Oh, they're so annoying. I end up building about 6 missile turrets per base just to get rid of the sodding things. But as you said, in a pro environment, you're right, they're not being used as much. They've been used a hell of a lot against Protoss, as we saw recently, a lot of use in the Lone Star Clash tournament quite recently, which caused all sorts of problems for lots of different Protoss players. But Terran hold them pretty damn well. Now, I want to ask your opinion on this map, because a few casters have been bigging it up quite a little bit. Once again, Lone Star Clash, great tournament, great games, and a lot of them happened on Metropolis. So what do you reckon?
My personal experience on it, I haven't played that much, just a few custom games to find out how it plays like, and it seems okay. But that's the same like any map that comes into the pro rotation. It always starts okay until somebody figures out this is a really bad map once a big sample has been played on it. So far it's been pretty good. I mean, we've seen a lot of fantastic games on it, and it's pretty well rounded for balance too. Of course, I'm always a bigger fan of cross positions only, rather than having, for example, EGIdrA spawn at the top right here or the right hand side. But and these are cross positions, of course. So I feel that this really could go anyway, and I don't think the map's going to really come into play at all.
Yeah, I'd also like to point out the distinguishing feature of this map is the fact that it has islands. It actually does have islands. But the sneaky thing that the map creator did was he put a creep tumor on either island, which specifically means you ain't grabbing that island unless you can clear the creep tumor.
Yeah, I really do like islands. They were kind of big in StarCraft 1, so it's good to see them back in StarCraft 2. As the other island maps, I can't even remember most of them. I guess Scrap Station was the most famous one.
Old versions of Lost Temple. Things like
that's
that.
Right too. Yeah. So we'll see if it actually comes into play. I actually haven't seen the islands been used at all in a professional game yet, so we'll see.
Good. This should be pretty fun to watch then, one way or the other. So it's a nice little setup here. Right now. Going on to build. So what we've got here, we've got MVP. He went with a Barracks first, followed by Gas, and is just going to start off with Reactor Hellion.
Yeah, very normal opening here by MVP, sorry, and has expanded on the low ground. No reason not to, of course. And we'll see what he does with the switcheroo, whether it be a tech lab straight away, and it should be that's the most standard option here for MVP to start Stim incredibly early, to obviously get the Marauder out too, but hasn't done that yet. Okay, there it does come down. On the other side of things, EGIdrA, to play in very standard Spinecrawler 2, this map can be a little bit awkward for Zerg players because the third base, again, isn't that easily taken because of the destructible debris in the way. And if he did try to take it, of course, Hellions can get there faster than anything else can. So EGIdRA's going to have to be looking around, getting a surround on early Hellions, or playing for a 2-base tech.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult to surround Hellions from MVP, honestly. His control is very, very good indeed. We've got this is interesting. We've got a second factory coming down here from MVP. He's now taking his second gas only. What do you reckon? I mean, there are a number of possibilities here. Obviously, straight mech. The possibility of Blue Flame Hellion is not completely out of the realms of... I mean, what do you reckon?
I think Blue Flame Hellion, I mean, mech is coming into play again, and I'll explain why after, but the way that EGIdRA plays Ling only, cutting corners, Blue Flame is fantastic against that, especially if he can squeeze in there. So I'd like to see Blue Flame come out, and he is continuing with Hellion production on both, so it is going to be Blue Flame and a Starport coming down too. So even if EGIdRA circumveys the damage on his natural, he ain't going to stop it in his main base.
Yeah, and that's a real risk, isn't it? So we need to start looking at things like EGIdRA's Overlord spread. He does have a reasonable Overlord spread thus far, but there's only so many Overlords you can have at this stage of the game, which does make things a little bit wonky, to say the least. And on a map of this size, it may be tricky. He doesn't have control of either the Xel'Naga towers here either, so in effect, if MVP took control of those towers, he could just go straight through the center and actually go for a Blue Flame Hellion drop. EGIdRA trying to get us around here. He takes a big hit to start with, and uncharacteristically, actually, MVP does end up losing Hellions there in a rather brutal fashion. Just didn't move them quick enough.
Yeah, wakey MVP. As that now basically allows EGIdRA to creep spread now and also take a third base, which should have never happened this early on. Reinforcement Hellions do come in, which can actually be a bit misleading here. Or not really misleading, but EGIdRA can be like, why are there extra Hellions? You know, at some stages you shouldn't really be going more than 4 to 6, especially on this map too. And so that was 4 initially, and then 4 more. That's 8 Hellions. EGIdRA should be asking questions, you know, why are they there? He does throw down a second Spine Crawler anyway on his natural, but he's really not anticipating this drop, which is incoming.
No, and he doesn't have control of that Xel'Naga tower, which, you know, we said this a couple of minutes ago. This can happen. He can just go straight up the middle, which is the best way to go if you want to dodge those Overlords. There's even a Viking coming on the field to clean up Overlords later, an expansion behind this. This is completely unseen here by EGIdRA. This is going to hurt.
Yeah, this is really going to hurt. He does have some lings, but let's see how good he can get us around with drones maybe as well. I don't know.
Well, I've got to say, actually, MVP really did misfire there with his first engagement, and EGIdRA shuts that down without too much of a problem, and only 4 workers killed. That was not worthwhile at all, and that was a mistake from MVP. That first shot went on the Queen and not on the drone line.
Yeah, this is really weird from MVP. Just not really playing that well in this match, and he definitely needs to play better than this if he wants to beat EGIdRA. I mean, EGIdRA is in a slump, but he's no walkover.
No,
we do have an Overlord by EGIdRA going into the main base and sees a third factory here, so he knows he's playing against Mech, and I now get to explain why Mech's coming back into play.
Go for it.
You know, 10 times out of 10 is that your opponent's going to be playing Ling Infester, and Bio is pretty bad against Ling Infester, as you've seen Stefano dominate time and time and time.
Yep.
So actually, Mech is now coming into play because what deals really good with Infestors? Well, Tank does. You know, the range of them and Hellions as well, and that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah. But the thing is that Mech is very exploitable as well, as we have also seen. We saw that in Symbol versus ThorZaIN, in fact. But it is exploited in ways that we may not see coming in from EGIdRA. EGIdRA, for all of his strengths, is not exactly what I'd call a creative player. Certainly not to the standard of Symbol. Symbol, we saw a lot of Roach drops coming in, but what we're seeing here is Roach Infester from EGIdRA.
Yeah, and the Roach one is really late. He only has Lings, and that's why he actually can't mine from his third base yet, because Hellions are just pushing him back. And these Lings, unless getting a complete surround on creep with Queen assistance, is not going to be good enough. A scan goes down from MVP on the natural here of EGIdRA, and sees the Infestation Pit, so he knows exactly what he's playing up against. So this is actually really, you know, going to the plan of MVP here, who's now taken a third base, should consider destroying the debris shortly, so he can actually transfer some SCVs down there properly and defend it easily. But EGIdRA's now had time to mine from that third base, but it's 3 base versus 3 base. It's not looking that good for EGIdRA.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit wonky. He's been able to defend quite nicely, and he's got a very significant worker lead at this stage, which is going to give him the edge going forward. He is continuing to build drones as well. We don't see drop capability coming in from EGIdRA at this point. I mean, Roach is what Symbol used to break Mech last time, but he did it from the air. And it's not something we see a lot of from EGIdRA. It's not inconceivable. He actually is just going to go for this early hive again, which we saw quite a lot of as well in his games against ThorZaIN.
Yeah, he's going to rush to Broodlords here. Ultras are really, really bad against Mech because Hellions just tank way, way too much damage.
Yeah, they also get in the way.
Yeah, they get in the way, they're just annoying. And look at that, an amazing scan there by MVP, right into the main base, sees exactly what's going on. Doesn't quite see the Spire, of course, which is on the natural area, but that's fine. He sees the Hive, which is a perfect timing push. I mean, this is what Mech has to do, because they don't have what it takes to beat Broodlords yet. But if they push before Broodlords are even there, then he can obviously kill everything EGIdRA has.
Yeah, a bit of an awkward little push here by EGIdrA that actually pays off quite nicely and thins the Hellion count out, but the push is now on its way, and we need to see nothing but units coming out from EGIdrA in order to hold against this. His creep spread is pretty good, and there are a number of areas where he could engage here, but the risk is that tanks start to deploy behind this big cliff area and form this nasty impenetrable wall, start to very slowly push their way in.
There is that drop in the main and natural, but once again, 0 killed. 4 Hellions wasted again. EGIdrA cleans it up, and now he only has to focus on the actual army. And MVP smartly decides to push back. He knows that the 4th base has only been taken, and a lot of units have been forced out and gas taken away from actual Broodlords here.
Oh my!
And oh my god.
Did he really just let him do that? He did! And what? I'm flabbergasted that that actually just happened. I really am.
It's still okay, though. Even though he lost those units, I think it's still okay here because he has such a good army composition anyway that can't be broken down, and he's starting Viking production. He should really be looking on taking that 4th base a little bit faster, which he's doing now, and getting additional starports. But EGIdrA streaming down the left-hand side, not wanting to just have these units go to waste.
No, absolutely not. Wants to engage, but as you said, good unit composition, a lot of Hellions available here, and no real ability to attack. He is going to push forward and just knock that tank out, because hey, why not? He's got vision of it, might as well. And now he can retreat, because there's no way... This is one of the problems with the mech army, is good luck catching that with anything but Hellions.
Vikings at the top left, just cleaning up Overlords. Haven't seen it in a very long time here. EGIdrA accidentally on the 4th base of MVP missed his creep spread of that Overlord. If only it was a little bit more north, he could have actually prevented that base. But EGIdrA just missing that one just a little bit there. But we do see the Greater Spy now finishing up, and Broodlords, of course, being morphed. But let's have a look at the actual unit composition correctly now. There's only 1 Thor and 5 Vikings. That's actually not enough yet to deal with what's there.
Not at all. If the Broodlord count starts going up. EGIdrA is pretty much maxed out, though. What he has to do is start to throw away units here. He's got to try and do damage, of course, but he needs to reduce his roach count, because right now he can't build anything. He's also got 92 drones. That's something else he might want to consider, throwing them into a lot of spines, for instance.
And here he is going to throw his units away, just try to take down as much as possible here.
Yeah, focus on the tanks and try and break his way through, and he gets a good little surround here and does a lot of damage, brings down a good number of tanks. Hellions come in to reinforce, a little bit too slow, however, and well, what are you going to do? Blue Flame Hellions versus Roaches, that really only goes one way, especially when you've got +2 armor upgrade. These Roaches are extremely hard to kill. Thor comes in to start clearing things up, though.
This is pretty good by EGIdrA. One big colossal mistake he made is he tried to run Infestors behind his Roaches to get towards the SUVs, but smartly MVP just hit them down with the tanks, which he did lose a bit of gas there. Of course, he wants to get rid of supply, but he can't just throw away gas, especially at this stage of the game where he's only on 4 bases.
Yeah. He had Burrow as well. I'm really not sure why I didn't use that, honestly.
Yeah,
there's no missile turret at the front, so, you know, at least he would have forced the scan there, so I'm not really sure why that happened.
Still no additional starports. He's just on... I mean, I guess he did start the Viking production nice and early, so he doesn't need to ramp it up immediately. We do have a tech lab on one of these starports too. Maybe see Ravens after. Ravens are pretty good dealing with late game Broodlords and so on if they get their Seeker missiles down. But EGIdrA now double expanding. 5th and 6th base been taken right and left hand side. And the reason why he double expands here is because if one base does get picked off, he always has the other one to rely on and transfer drones to. But MVP's army, man, is getting pretty scary. The Viking Cat's now at 13, about to be 16. As long as he spreads out and doesn't take big fungals, he should be okay.
Yeah, and EGIdrA does not have anywhere near as large an army as he did previously, and or that could happen. Yeah, that's a little bit grim. Is he going to end up losing all the Vikings here? Another fungal comes in. It doesn't kill all of them, though. He has done a lot of damage there, so that's a really good start for EGIdrA in this engagement. It has severely reduced the damage output coming in, but he really needs one more fungal, honestly. If he was able to land one more, and he's not going to get it. MVP's not going to let him do that. The Broodlords start to smash their way through, however. A lot of naked tanks here are going to be ripped to shreds, and both sides taking horrendous losses.
And EGIdrA, he has 50 gas in the bank. He's building 6 more Corruptors, because he doesn't have any to kill the Vikings. 26 Lings coming in, but there's still Blue Flame Hellions left, and EGIdrA getting torn apart.
Yeah, this is pretty grim. He's got to take the Hellions out. He really does, and good luck, honestly. The Broodlords did move back, but he did still lose a significant number. He holds very well, and he is now reinforcing. You'll see the supply count shooting up as an addition, as a result of adding on roaches. The Viking count also plummeting. It's down to 7 now. There's a possibility of Corruptors with Queen support actually overwhelming this. Another Thor gets surrounded by Broodlord fire. Another one about to fall as well. This is still looking really good for EGIdrA, honestly, and this attack is faltering badly by MVP.
Yeah, this is actually really surprising here that EGIdRA's managing to push this back, but the Vikings do remain, and they're picking off one Corruptor at a time, so the Broodlords will go down shortly. The really worrying thing here is not so much the lack of army from MVP, well, I guess that is kind of worrying, but the expansions that are rapidly popping up here for MVP, who is still having a sick income behind this.
Yeah, absolutely. He hasn't taken an island expansion at this stage. He's going to have a roach run by here by EGIdRA. He's just going to want to shut this tech lab down. We've got Thor coming in just to try and clean that up as well. Viking count is still up, and there are no Broodlords left on the field now at this stage. But there are 12 Vikings. Will it make him vulnerable to some kind of...
Vikings, though.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, they're down on there, and...
Wow.
There you go, and... EGIdRA cleans it up. Very nice start there by EGIdRA. You can't really take away from that. That hold was amazing. It really was. He had what he needed, and he did significant damage. He held... I mean, it wasn't just that one hold, though. It was every hold before that. He held every piece of aggression really well. The Blue Flame Hellion drop fails utterly. The second Blue Flame Hellion drop, complete and total disaster. And then the aggression that came in initially, that little push, where he got completely caught out of position, loses like 5 or 6 tanks, 2 Thors, all of his Hellions, and then is vulnerable to counter pressure that picks off yet more tanks. And when that push finally came from MVP, it was anemic. It just was not good enough.
Yeah, that was really surprising. I really didn't think that would happen there, and I'm really actually happy for EGIdRA, who managed to pull that win out.
Well played.
You know, that he's still very much so in a dire position in terms of his group, but still, if he could salvage a win versus MVP, maybe there'd still be hope from the community that EGIdRA can continue on from here. So that's a really good win.
I want to see that. I don't think anyone really wants to see, unless, of course, they're hatefully minded, a player just fall flat on his face. You know, that would be sad to see. That was a really good example of ZvT against Mech, not using gimmicks either. I mean, we pointed out the whole symbol method of dealing with Mech. EGIdRA deals with it just by having better engagements. Straight up better engagements. And MVP, it just seemed awkward in that game, honestly. He really did.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest... I really would have liked to see some ghosts just for a couple of EMPs on Infestors. Would have made things a little bit easier. But, I mean, I can't really take anything away from MVP, and you've got to give it all to EGIdRA, who played a really good game and managed to just have enough. Even though he lost complete air dominance towards the end, is that he overwhelmed with Lings and Roach and tech switched out that, you know, really did push MVP back and out of the game there.
Yeah. I like the fact that, you know, the Broodlords eventually went down, and then we saw the problem with having too many Vikings, that Zerg player on that many bases can immediately say, hey, look at the lava I've got. I'm just going to throw a lot of roaches at you at this stage, backed up by Lings, and what have you got left to deal with it? His tank count was severely depleted by the damage that EGIdRA had done to him previously, so he couldn't hold this. And it happened also suddenly as well. We saw the reinforcements coming in from EGIdRA, and this big hold, and the Broodlords go down, and you think, oh, well, that's a dire, that's really bad for the Zerg player, but then suddenly you realize, hang on a minute, he doesn't have any tanks, and he's producing Thors, he's bringing Banshees out, but in fact, that tech lab got sniped off, didn't it? So that actually delayed the Banshee significantly. There wasn't even a Banshee in the air to start picking off roaches.
No, there wasn't, and you know, there's at that point, even if there was, I think EGIdRA just has too much,
too many,
too many Lings, too many Roaches. But he did have so much, and that was actually a smart decision by EGIdRA, but kind of a forced decision, is because he had like 50 gas during that big fight, and he's like, well, I guess I'm not making any more high-tech units, but I do have 4,000 minerals, and then use them efficiently.
Smart play by EGIdRA, very smart, very well played game, man. I tell you. Symbol has all of his hopes riding on EGIdRA at the moment. Having taken one map, if EGIdRA takes a 2-0 sweep against MVP, Symbol might have a shot. We shall see, folks. Will EGIdRA be able to continue this dominance, or will MVP be able to rally from this position? We'll find out very shortly, folks. Don't go anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Cloud Kingdom, which will be the arena for the next matchup in this best-of-3 series between IMMVP. He is in the blue trunks, and he is playing Terran to the northeast, versus his opponent, currently at one game, which many people would not have seen coming. It was Evil Genius's EGIdrA in the green trunks, playing Zerg to the southwest.
And I was just watching EGIdrA do his little drone trick where he forces both of them to work together and just gets a little bit more efficiency. You know, the small things. MVP actually not trying to do that at all. And this map, of course, more defensive map again to begin with, but does open up to a very aggressive map with lots of run-bys available for EGIdrA to use. Counterattacks, flanks can be set up. So we'll see if he does play to the map. We have seen a lot of mech being played on this map again by Terran players, but we'll see if MVP tries again. I mean, if it failed in game 1, does he try again? Or does he change it up?
Yeah, that's a really good question, isn't it? I've got to say, we are actually seeing the benefits of living in the Slayer's house here. EGIdrA, his ZvT was always good. It is on the verge of getting really monstrous, honestly. And I'm seeing, certainly in this series, a renewed confidence by EGIdrA, even considering that at this stage he is out. You know, there's nothing he can really do from this stage. Even if he wins this 2-0, then as far as I'm aware, he is still out of the tournament.
Yeah, that's what it looks like on our calculations. So,
yeah.
But still fighting though, like I said, still displaying as good game and as good as possible.
Oh dear. Ooh. Well,
yeah,
here it goes.
That's a bit weird.
Yeah, Proxy Rax in a very odd spot from MVP here. He was going for the second Rax as well, but that drone comes in and actually scouts that. Almost kills the SCV, doesn't, unfortunately. And this seems to me like MVP was trying to exploit the problems that EGIdrA has in early game. Now, didn't we see a kind of similar wonky thing from Boxer in this matchup?
Yeah, I think he did it with double, though.
Yeah, he was going for double low. That's the thing. He was going to build the second one. The blueprint was down on the floor, but it was stopped because EGIdrA actually scouted it.
Yeah, that's a good pickup by EGIdrA, and shows again to Zerg players that you can still have to drone scout, guys. A lot of players do skip on it now, but you don't know if that is 2 racks or if it is just straight up command center build. So very smart from EGIdrA to still continue to do that. And I guess the follow up from this is just going to be command center here from MVP. Yeah,
well, there's nothing else he can do really. He's already sitting on the minerals floor. The command center comes down. Now, what does EGIdrA do having scouted that? I mean, I would think, considering how long he was hanging around there, he's got to be thinking, well, maybe it was going to be a 2 racks, or maybe it's just one of these wonky things where he's trying to trick me one way or the other. So how does he react? Does he overreact? Well, he certainly hasn't. He's only built 2 lings, so I think that EGIdra's just fine here.
Yeah, and this has always been, EGIdra's claimed is that he, plays better against good players, like top-tier players, because he knows exactly how they should be thinking and always gets caught off guard. For example, if a continuation attack came here from MVP, EGIdrA has 2 lings, but MVP does decide, all right, he spots it, I can't continue with this, so EGIdrA only builds 2 lings knowing that. So that's, when EGIdrA always complains on the multiple montage videos is, I beat you if you were better, and then people are like, well, wait a minute, I just beat you, so am I not better? But that's basically what, EGIdrA always complains about.
That's his mindset, isn't it? And you can certainly understand his position there, but unfortunately that's, that would only be the case if everyone played like a robot. And they don't. And that's what really catches him out sometimes. If he's able to get into a straight-up game where he has information and he doesn't make assumptions, then EGIdrA plays incredibly well.
Yeah, he really does, and let's see if he does it in this game. And looking at MVP's base, he went double gas actually before adding on extra barracks, so he's actually got a lot of gas banked up fast and a factory thrown down. I suppose that's going to be for tanks. I mean, you can go medivacs, but without any upgrades, combat shield or stim or anything, and you need to throw down, Tech Lab reactor on these barracks probably. Maybe Tech Lab reactor, depending on how he wants to upgrade. But the factory here, weirdly, is going to be for tanks, I feel, which is a little bit less common now. You don't really see that often because tank pushes are so easily dealt with just by lings alone, but it may come as a surprise to EGIdrA because he's not really expecting tank play at all.
Yeah, we've got 1 tech lab coming down. The other 2 barracks are just going to build Marines to start with. Well, I mean, I suppose he needs the gas to build tank and also to build siege at the same time here. Another tech lab now coming down there. Interesting stuff here from MVP. Just 2 base from EGIdrA at the moment. He's going to go once again with this double evolution chamber build.
Yeah, it's just for, straight up Lings. It's a very smooth Zerg play from Lings to Infestor into, of course, Broodlord's Ultralist, whatever he decide to do. And surprisingly from MVP, he's not adding on reactors here early on. Therefore, he's just going to have faster Marines faster. That's funny. And he's going to go for these tanks. So he may actually poke out very soon. With combat shields and just a limited amount of stuff. And EGIdrA sees there's no actually add-ons, so MVP's not really playing for the later stages. So he should actually start building units very shortly upon seeing that.
Yeah, that logic is absolutely sound in that respect. When you put your reactors down, you think, oh, well, I want to build lots of Marines, so I'm going to put reactors down. But the problem is that it opens up this timing where you don't have a lot of units because it takes 50 seconds to put a reactor down, and then, of course, the build time of the Marines. So if you do want to go for this kind of push, then you can't put the reactors on at all. But the question is, does he go for it? I mean, does he go out with 2 tanks and combat shield? That looks to be the kind of timing he's looking for here.
Yeah, I think that's what he's going to try to do. But EGIdrA, with the Overlord on the high ground, sees everything. So I don't really know how this is going to work, because EGIdra's never going to allow MVP, first of all, to get a good position on EGIdrA. And second of all, MVP has to lift the barracks here. So EGIdrA can always go on counterattack if he doesn't land the barracks down again. Which he should do. Okay, he does. So counterattack, not an option, but definitely not allowing MVP to take a good one is definitely something EGIdrA has to do here.
Yeah, and he's got information. He's got decent creep spread as well. He is at that Zelnaga watchtower with the creeps. So the push is really got to start from that location, because you don't want to just roll out undeployed onto creep, because you will get surrounded by Lings. Link count at the moment, though, is only 20, so actually he doesn't have that option yet, which is unfortunate, because it's allowed these siege tanks to get forward a bit, and that was a really good scan as well. There were not a lot of creep tumors out, so this creep is going to start receding.
And MVP can't really attack up with the Spine Crawler and the rocks there, so he actually decides to come around the back. Picks off a lot of Lings there, a little bit of a mistake by EGIdrA, but EGIdrA is starting to get a good amount of Lings, which could surround this.
Yeah, I don't really like the decision to roll out with so many, honestly. Just sending a single Ling forward just to get an idea of where his opponent is would have been nice, but now MVP actually has a pretty solid position. He could be flanked from behind here. Now, that's, I suppose, the only real risk. So, will EGIdrA be able to pull that off? We've got 57 Lings now. 30 Marines on the field, but they're not all with this force by any stretch.
EGIdrA, where is he going? Okay, he's going to the other Zelnaga tower.
He's going to
try
try and catch him on
the
the way back.
retreat path.
Yeah.
And still no vision from EGIdrA. Oh, okay, now he sees it with this Overlord on the right-hand side. So he's going to definitely 1-1 his finish here too.
Yeah, he's going for it, and the tanks are caught undeployed here, and they're just going to shell the Marines as well in the process, so a lot of damage is going to be done one way or the other, and there's the cleanup from EGIdrA. Nicely done.
And the follow-up path behind this, I mean, really for MVP, has a starport down, is making his first couple of medivacs, and now he's like, oh, god damn it, okay, more barracks need to go down, because even if he does try to build a third base, he doesn't have a big unit count again and can easily get overswarmed. So we do have +1 finishing as well, and there's the third command center coming down after the additional barracks, so really does want to ramp up that production. Again, he hasn't taken the opportunity to throw down reactors yet, because once again, he's caught in a position where he doesn't have units. So we actually see EGIdrA now at layer tech getting double upgrades all over the place. Infestor pits down, so he's actually getting pathogen glands, a third base. EGIdrA just showing that, alright, yeah, maybe he doesn't do very well against Protoss, but he's definitely still doing good against Terran.
Oh, he is. He really is. Like, his ZvT at the minute is looking mind-blowing. He's doing it really, really well. He's exploiting every error that MVP is making. And you've got to do that, because usually errors from MVP are just so few and far between. In this series, though, he has not been looking good. I've got to say, he has had a bunch of bad engagements.
And it just hit me why MVP hasn't built a couple of Rectors down. I'm like, alright, just throw it on Telab Rector. And then MVP lifts up a barracks and tries to move out, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's a reactor in the way.
Yeah.
He could have done it on one, though, so maybe he's just going to move one out the way, build it on the other one. But he does have a couple of Rectors in the main base now. Double Engineering Bay down, Armory finishing up, so he can go into 2+2 very shortly. And MVP now starting to move across towards his third base. Smartly by EGIdrA, will have Creep Spread to push away the third base and a Ling underneath here. So really good play, and we do see that early Hive again coming out for EGIdrA. And this is more so a gamble than it is against pure mech. Of course, because against pure mech is the mech player doesn't really push out that early, and he's not expecting to push out earlier. But against bio, they can push at any time.
Yeah, that's true. EGIdrA, slight supply block here, but that shouldn't really hold him up too much. Supply block is just, it's just not all that relevant for Zerg, honestly, unless it's a really heavy block at a very awkward time. And MVP is now looking to push out. He's got significantly more tanks this time around. He does have +1. This push is pretty much time to hit with +1 armor finishing as well. But EGIdrA is already 2-2, and he's got a lot of infestors, and he's got great creep spread, and has got a successful run by. And whoa, 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 this could really be problematic here. In they go into the main base. +2 lanes are going to ravage this mineral line.
Yeah, and it just saw MVP move out and moves in as soon as he does. So beautiful play by EGIdrA, but sloppy from MVP not clearing that overload on the higher ground on his natural. And let's have a look at the SCVs killed. And that's 14 SCVs killed during the game now, so that was definitely a lot picked off there.
Yeah, very significant. 41 versus 75 workers now, and I don't know what's happening here, man, but EGIdrA is dominating MVP, and things are looking incredibly good for him. He's not seriously going to be caught out there while the sensor tower... No, actually, there is no sensor tower, come to think of it. He does have control of the Xel'Naga tower now, though, so rushing into that is going to be a little bit trickier.
Why isn't MVP putting his third base down? He's making so many mistakes. He's got so much energy on the Nexus.
Well, there's a borrowed Zergling right there.
I know,
from EGIdRA
like he won't get rid of it. This is so bad from MVP, but he does have a pretty stinging push here. But with Infestors, he can take the punch out of it.
Yeah, he can. That's the dangerous thing, isn't it? Good deployment there by MVP, getting good position and a couple of good shots off. Also, it means this base over here is under threat if MVP decides to go in that particular direction. He doesn't know about it yet, though. Wow, a mass counterattack coming in here from EGIdrA. He's just going to go for it and try and break his way through. He gets a fungal to follow that one up, and EGIdRA's just going to go right in there and is ignoring this army completely, going for the throat.
But Cryptos are about to pop, and he can make actually Brutal shortly, so he's hoping that MVP just stays around this third base for a little bit longer and allows EGIdRA time. Oh dear, a scan goes off, sees the Greater Spire, sees the Cryptos, so he's definitely going to be sprinting for that, and EGIdRA has to return.
Yes, he does. The Infestors were already on the way. He's got a lot of Infestors and a lot of energy here, but as you pointed out previously, the risk is that he gets tank shell. The Burrow goes down, the scan goes down as well. One of the Infestors is picked off. A good stim here by MVP, but he is out of energy, and these Fungals are going to absolutely slaughter that Marine count as a direct result. They were far too worn down. MVP takes a huge hit on his army, is left with little but tanks.
But the Broodlords now are out. 3 Broodlords, there's nothing to deal with this. Solely Marines on the ground. Infestors still at 9, and a lot of energy for all of them. So even though MVP's dropped acute force in the main base, Spinecrawl takes out the majority, and EGIdRA manages to hold and now has the tech, and likewise actually has the economy advantage, as MVP lost so many SCVs, still doesn't have the third base down either.
Down to 26, and this base here is just untouched. MVP does not know about it. That is huge here for EGIdRA, and this could end up being the 2-0 sweep that everyone thought was impossible. This base has finally gone down, but already Ling's moving in to ravage the transfer of SCVs, and he can't afford that. MVP has barely got any to begin with.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened to MVP, but he's just not playing to the same standard we usually see, and EGIdRA taking full advantage of that, and now is marching through with an unstoppable force. Viking count currently at 1, a second one on its way, but he doesn't even have resources to really add on a reactor onto that starport. A second starport only just been thrown down, so EGIdRA marching through, and MVP, can he seriously hold this? I really don't think so.
Not in a million years, in my honest opinion. Look at it. It's massive. It is ridiculous. The amount of upgrades he's got, the amount of tech he's got, unit count advantage is massive. A single Viking is really going to fight those off? I don't think so. That simply isn't going to happen. EGIdRA is going to now hammer down on here. The fungal lands, it's perfect, and there's the GG, and a 2-0 sweep for EGIdRA. And MVP's position in this tournament just took a turn for the horrendous.
Yeah, and even though EGIdRA just, just to clarify that, even though EGIdRA just took a 2-0 sweep, that still puts him at 2-2 in the group, so he's in the mid stages now, but he's still at 4 wins and 5 losses, which is not going to be enough to push him through, because Symbol currently, let's Symbol at 0-2, he's at 5-4, so if he lost, he'd still have a better map ratio than EGIdRA if he lost his last game. Actually, Symbol's already played.
Symbol's played, yeah. Symbol's 2-2 now, and he's played his last game. But one way or the other, he's got a better map ratio, and even if he didn't, then
he's got head-to-head.
He's got head-to-head. So there's no chance of that happening, and MC's got a map lead. So there is no way for EGIdrA to go through. It's only 2 out of 5. It sounds cruel, but that's the way that the groups are set up. So even after a stellar victory against MVP, EGIdrA still cannot advance. However, this does mean this final match is critical. And the reason it's critical is if MVP, this is the scenario that we put forward. If MVP would lose 2-0 to EGIdrA and then lose 2-0 to MC, then MVP would not advance, SKMC would advance, which is, of course, it seemed so unlikely going into this match, but is now looking incredibly viable considering MC's current form.
And I'm just looking at the map scores. If MVP doesn't win no matter what, even if he loses 2-1, he still goes out because SKMC still have a better map record, I think.
Really?
But we'll have to clarify that in the break to be sure. But MVP is up against it, man, and he's playing MC, who is so good. He is so good at this point, and especially, he's changed his form against Terran, so this is actually even closer, and even though we said championship someday, MC versus MVP is actually even more important than it did, or was meant to be from the start of the show.
Yeah, exactly. Just one map taken here by MVP, in my honest, would have done it as far as our calculations went. But that didn't happen. This was money in the bank here for MVP. At least it should have been. But EGIdrA says, no, I'm not having any of that nonsense. And this is a good attitude change here from EGIdrA, because we've heard so many things from him and from others, like, hey, pointless games. What's the point in playing that game when I know that I'm out anyway? But you know what? He plays it incredibly well, and he wins it 2-0, even though he can't advance through the group stage. So I wonder, has Alex Garfield been talking to Greg once again? And if he has, then his influence has obviously helped him out a lot, because he just beat one of the best Terran in the world, and honestly, it wasn't even close.
No, it was not close. He completely outclassed MVP there, and oh man, I'm so excited. I can just think about, all I'm thinking about is this last match, man. Oh wow, MVP versus MC.
Not only is it going to be epic, but it's also going to be vital, one way or the other. The 3-way between those 3 Koreans, that's still going on, and it could now very much swing in the favor of SKMC in one of the biggest upsets we've seen in this tournament so far. Let's find out if that's going to happen. We're going to go to a quick break, and when we come back, the final match of Group B decides who goes forward into the round of 8 of IronSquid, and it is going to be MVP versus MC.